In 1995, the average black household spent about $90 a week on groceries, and most of it went into one Sunday dinner that fed 3 generations. That kitchen had a sound, pressure cooker hissing, cast iron warming. The Sunday cook of the 90s worked from memory, and she knew which recipes carried the family and which ones filled the plate. Number 22 on this list was the dish every working mother stretched into 3 meals. Number 15 vanished when the kids stopped coming home for supper. Number 4 on this list was the snack that lived in every glove compartment on the block. Hit that subscribe button and stay with us. The 90s felt like the decade we finally had a little money until food courts and freezer aisles walked these recipes off the table. Here are 30 African American recipes from the 1990s nobody eats anymore. Number 30, smothered pork chops over rice. This was the dish that meant the bills got paid that week. 3 thin-cut chops dredged in seasoned flour, browned in the same skillet our grandmothers had used since the 70s. Then the gravy, onions, a little garlic, water from the kettle, and the brown drippings scraped up off the bottom of the pan. It went over a mountain of long-grain Uncle Ben's, and the gravy soaked clear through to the plate. In the 90s, this was a Tuesday dinner, not a Sunday one. Working mothers made it in 40 minutes between getting off the bus and waking up the youngest for homework. The chops cost about $1.29 a pound at the neighborhood Kroger. The rice cost almost nothing. What you tasted was patience pretending to be hurry. Number 29, salmon croquettes with saltines. Pink can of double Q salmon, crushed crackers, 1 egg, and a hot skillet of Crisco. That was the whole recipe, and every black household in the 90s had a version of it. Some folks added diced onion, some folks added a little yellow mustard, and the strict ones picked out every bone and every silver disc of skin before mixing. The patties were small, about the size of a coffee saucer, and they crisped up dark gold in the oil. They went on the plate next to grits at breakfast and next to rice and gravy at supper. A can of salmon cost about $1.50 and stretched into 6 croquettes that fed a family of 4 with leftovers cold the next morning. Number 28, hamburger helper cheeseburger macaroni. The box hit the shelf in the early 70s, but the 90s was when it lived on the dinner table. A pound of ground chuck, browned and drained, 1 box, 1.5 cups of water, 2 cups of milk, and 12 minutes on the stove. The helping hand mascot smiled from the box while working parents stretched a $5 dinner across 4 kids and a husband working second shift. Cheeseburger macaroni was the flavor everyone in the house actually agreed on. The yellow-orange sauce was sharp and salty and a little bit synthetic in a way that 90s kids learned to love. Beef stroganoff and lasagna sat next to it in the pantry, but cheeseburger was the one that ran out first. Mothers added a can of Rotel for heat or a handful of frozen peas for color and called it dinner. Nobody apologized for it. The leftover pot in the fridge was breakfast for whoever woke up first, eaten cold with a fork right out of the saucepan. Number 27, fried whiting with grits. Friday night fish fry in a small kitchen, the apartment smelling like cornmeal and hot oil from 3 doors down. Whiting was the cheapest whole fish at the seafood counter, about $1.90 a pound, sold frozen in flat blue boxes. The fillets got soaked in yellow mustard, dredged in Laurie's seasoned cornmeal, and dropped into hot peanut oil until the edges curled. They went on the plate next to a mound of stone ground grits, a wedge of lemon, and 2 slices of light bread to make a sandwich if the spirit moved you. Friday night was payday night, and the smell of frying whiting traveled through every hallway in the building. Number 26, hot wings with blue cheese. The 90s were when the corner wing spot became its own kind of church. 10 wings, dipped in Frank's Red Hot and melted margarine, shaken in a styrofoam clamshell with a slick of ranch or blue cheese in the corner. $5.99 got you the combo with fries and a grape soda. The chicken and wing shop boom of the early 90s put a hot wing counter on what felt like every other block in Detroit and Atlanta and Cleveland. Friday after work, Saturday after the game, Sunday after church if your mother let you. The blue cheese came in a little plastic cup with a foil lid, and serious eaters used it for the celery only. The fries soaked up the wing grease at the bottom of the box, and that was always the best bite. Number 25, Sunday smothered chicken and rice. This is the smell that made the whole apartment building know what day it was. A whole cut-up fryer, bone in, browned in a heavy skillet until the skin went the color of pecan. The bird came out, the flour went in, and the roux turned slow under a wooden spoon. Onions and bell pepper followed, a little garlic if grandma trusted you with the jar, and then chicken stock from the kettle that had been simmering on the back burner since service let out at noon. The chicken pieces went back in, the lid went on, and the smothering began. An hour, sometimes 90 minutes, while everyone changed out of their church clothes and the long grain rice came up to a boil in a separate pot. The gravy got thick enough to coat the back of a spoon. The kitchen windows fogged. The plastic on the good couch in the living room squeaked every time somebody walked past with a hungry look. The sound of a Sunday smothered chicken was a low and steady simmer that you could hear from the front door. The sound of the lid coming off was the sound that called everyone to the table. 2 scoops of rice, 2 pieces of chicken with the dark meat going to whoever had been the most polite that week, and a long pour of gravy over the whole plate. Cornbread on the side, sweet tea in the jelly jar glass, and a paper towel folded into a napkin because the cloth ones were saved for company. This was the meal that taught a whole generation what unhurried tasted like. The detail no one mentions is the second plate, the one wrapped in foil and put on the back of the stove for the family member who got off work at 6. It was always still warm when they walked in. Number 24, Banquet Salisbury, steak TV dinner. 99 cents at the Save-A-Lot, 6 minutes in the microwave, and the foil tray steamed up the kitchen for 10 seconds when you peeled the plastic back. A brown dish of pressed beef and mushroom gravy, a square of mashed potatoes that came out gray, corn kernels in one corner, a brownie in the other, and the whole thing eaten in front of the little kitchen TV with the bent antenna. In a lot of black households in the 90s, the Banquet Salisbury was what dinner looked like on the nights mama worked a double. It was not a celebration plate, it was a placeholder plate that did its job. The brownie was always the part you saved for last. Number 23, now and laters, from the corner store. A dime got you a long pink and yellow brick of cherry and banana that broke your back teeth before it softened up enough to chew. The corner store in the 90s had a glass counter at kid eye level, and that whole counter was candy. Now, and laters next to lemon heads, next to Boston baked beans, next to a tray of Mary Janes that had been there since the Reagan administration. After school, a quarter went a long way. 10 cents for the candy, 15 cents for a frozen Huggy in the back freezer, and the rest of the walk home was spent biting and chewing and trying to make a brick of cherry last the 8 blocks. Nobody's mother knew exactly what was in a now and later. Nobody asked. The wrapper was the receipt, and the receipt was folded into the back pocket of jeans that came home from school every day with a sugary square in the corner. Number 22, smothered neck bones with lima beans. This was the dish every working mother stretched into 3 meals. 5 pounds of pork neck bones, about $1.19 a pound at the meat counter, simmered low for 3 hours with an onion, 2 bay leaves, and enough water to cover. The first meal was the neck bones themselves over rice with the lima beans on the side. The second meal was the broth poured over cornbread for lunch the next day. The third meal was whatever meat was left, picked clean off the bones, folded into a pot of greens on Wednesday. 1 pot of neck bones fed a family from Sunday supper to Tuesday lunch. 90s grocery budgets did not have room for waste, and nobody on the block treated a neck bone like an afterthought. Number 21, BBQ rib. Tips in a styrofoam box. The Chicago rib tip in the 90s was a whole genre, sold from walk-up windows with bulletproof glass and a turnstile of pre-folded boxes behind the counter. Tips were the cartilaginous end of the spare rib, the part butchers used to throw away, smoked over hickory in a converted oil drum until the fat rendered and the meat pulled clean. A $6.95 small order came with 2 slices of white bread, a scoop of slaw, and a flood of sauce that turned the bread red and then orange and then translucent at the corners. People ate them on the hood of the car in the parking lot while the smoke was still rising off the box. The bones got piled up on the dashboard because nobody wanted to put a greasy hand back on the steering wheel until the eating was done. Number 20, fried bologna sandwich on Wonder Bread. 2 slices of Oscar Mayer in a hot, dry skillet until the edges curled up and the middle puffed like a little dome. Mustard on 1 slice of Wonder, mayo on the other, and the fried bologna slapped between them while the bread was still cold. Saturday morning breakfast in 1,000 kitchens. The puffed dome had to be poked with a fork to flatten it back down before the sandwich would close. Some grandmothers added a single slice of American cheese. Some added a fried egg with the yolk broken on purpose. The sandwich was eaten standing up at the counter most of the time because Saturday morning had laundry and grocery shopping and a whole list of errands waiting on the other side of breakfast. By the way, real quick before we get to the next one, if everything you have heard so far is making you hungry for the kind of cooking that actually fed 3 generations on 1 paycheck, the cookbook we put together has the full versions of these dishes written down the way our grandmothers actually made them. The link is in the description below if you want to take a look. Now, back to the list. Number 19, Hawaiian Punch and Sprite Mix. The red gallon jug of Hawaiian Punch lived next to the 2-liter of Sprite in the fridge of every birthday party we ever attended. The mix was simple. Pour the Sprite in first, halfway up the cup, then top with Hawaiian Punch until the whole thing turned the color of brick. The fizz lasted about 4 minutes, just long enough to drink it before the carbonation flattened out and you went back for a refill. Kids called it sunrise. Grown folks called it the punch. At the cookout, somebody's auntie added orange juice and the whole batch went into a 5-gallon igloo cooler with a ladle. By 6 o'clock in the evening, the cooler had nothing left but red ice and a slick of pulp at the bottom. 90s cookout drinks were not subtle. They were loud and sweet and exactly the same color as the paper plates. Number 18, hot Cheetos in a styrofoam cup. The corner store served flaming hot Cheetos in a small white cup with a plastic spoon doused in nacho cheese pumped from a chrome dispenser on the counter. $1 got you the cup. Another quarter got you a little hug juice in the side pocket of your backpack to chase the heat. The Flamin' Hot Bag launched in 1992, and within 2 years, it was the snack that defined walking home from middle school in Houston, Memphis, Baltimore, and Compton. The styrofoam cup was the upgrade, the way the corner store said, "This is not just a bag of chips, this is a meal. Red fingers, red lips, red corner of the mouth." Some kids ate the whole cup standing in front of the store. Some kids saved half for the bus ride home, and ate the second half with the cheese already cold and gluey. Either way, the cup ended up in the trash can on the corner of the block. Number 17, Spam sandwiches with yellow mustard. The blue and yellow can sat in the pantry behind the canned peaches, and on the days the deli meat ran out, Spam was the backup plan. 2 slices, a 1/4 inch thick, fried in a dry pan until the edges crisped. Mustard on Wonder Bread, 2 pickle slices if there were any in the fridge, and lunch was on the table in 6 minutes. In the 90s, Spam was lunchbox food in plenty of households that did not talk about it at school. The salty, sweet flavor and the slight chew were comfort food in a way that the kids who grew up on it still recognize the second they smell it, frying. Number 16, candied yams with marshmallows on top. The 9x13 Pyrex dish came out of the oven with the marshmallow tops going toasted brown, almost black at the edges, and the syrup bubbling around the sides. 3 cans of Bruce's yams, drained. A stick of butter, a cup of brown sugar, a heavy shake of cinnamon, a half teaspoon of nutmeg, and a splash of vanilla. The whole thing stirred together in the Pyrex, topped with a full bag of Kraft Jet Puff mini marshmallows, and slid into a 350-degree oven for 30 minutes. The marshmallow crust cracked when the serving spoon went in. Underneath, the yams had collapsed into a thick orange jam that tasted more like dessert than a side dish. On Thanksgiving, the candied yams went on the plate next to the turkey and the dressing, and on a regular Sunday in October, they showed up at supper just because. A spoonful of yams next to a smothered pork chop was the kind of pairing that grandmothers worked out a generation before food writers tried to give it a name. Number 15, Sunday oxtails and rice. This was the dish that vanished when the kids stopped coming home for supper. 4 pounds of oxtails, bone in, dredged in seasoned flour, and browned in a heavy Dutch oven until the fat went from white to gold. Onions, bell pepper, garlic, 2 bay leaves, a glug of Worcestershire, and enough water to cover. Then the lid went on and the oven door closed, and 3 hours later, the meat slid off the bone with the side of a fork. A scoop of long grain rice on the plate, 3 oxtails on top, and a heavy ladle of brown gravy that pooled around the edge. In the 90s, oxtails were still cheap, about $2 a pound at the corner butcher. By the time the grown kids had their own apartments and their own Sunday plans, the pot got smaller, and then one Sunday, the pot just stayed in the cabinet. Number 14, baked spaghetti with ground beef. The 9x13 pan came out of the oven with the top layer of mozzarella browned in patches and the noodles crisped along the corners. A pound of thin spaghetti, boiled and drained, a pound of ground beef, browned with onion, and a jar of ragu. The whole thing layered with cheese, baked at 375 for 25 minutes, and brought to the table in the same Pyrex it came out of. The corner piece was the prize. Black folks made baked spaghetti a soul food side dish in the 90s, served right next to the greens and the rolls, and nobody thought twice about the carb-on-carb math. Number 13, collard greens with smoked ham hocks. 2 big bunches of greens, stripped off the stem leaf by leaf, washed 3 times in a sink full of cold water until the grit was gone. A smoked ham hock or a few smoked turkey necks went into a big pot with water, a chopped onion, a clove of garlic, and a heavy splash of apple cider vinegar. The hock simmered for an hour before the greens went in. Then another 90 minutes, lid on, the kitchen filling with that smoky, salty smell that meant Sunday was coming. The potlikker at the bottom of the pot was the bonus. It got sopped up with a square of cornbread, and that bite was the one grandmothers always saved for the person who washed the greens. Number 12, cornbread dressing on Thanksgiving. A pan of skillet cornbread, baked the night before, left out uncovered on the counter, so it dried out just enough to soak up broth without falling apart. Crumbled into a big bowl with day-old biscuits, sage, black pepper, sautéed onion and celery, 2 eggs, and a quart of turkey stock from the giblets. The whole thing went into a buttered pan and baked until the top got crusty and the inside stayed soft. Black Thanksgiving dressing was a side, not a stuffing. It never went inside the bird. In the 90s, the recipe was rarely written down. Grandmothers measured with their hands, and the dressing tasted slightly different in every house on the block. Number 11, red beans and rice on Monday. A pound of dried camellia red beans soaked overnight on the back of the stove, then simmered all Monday afternoon with the smoked sausage from Sunday's leftovers, onion, bell pepper, celery, a few cloves of garlic, 2 bay leaves, and the smoked end of whatever pork was left in the fridge from the weekend. The beans went over a scoop of white rice, and a link of hot sausage went on the side. Monday, red, beans and rice was a New Orleans habit that traveled north with the migration. By the 90s, it was a Monday plate in Houston, in Memphis, in Detroit, and Oakland. Number 10, banana pudding with Nilla wafers. The big glass Pyrex bowl came out of the fridge with the bananas gone a little brown around the edges and the cookies softened into something halfway between a cake and a custard. A box of Jell-O instant vanilla pudding, a can of Eagle brand, sweetened condensed milk, a tub of Cool Whip folded in for lift. The bottom of the bowl lined with Nilla wafers, a layer of banana slices, a layer of pudding, repeat until the bowl was full. The top was always a tight ring of wafers stood on edge like a little crown. Banana pudding in a black household in the 90s showed up at the cookout, the church social, the family reunion, and the repast after the funeral. The corner spoonful had the most brown banana and the softest cookie, and the last person at the table always took it. Number 9, fried catfish with hush puppies. Whole catfish fillets soaked in buttermilk and yellow mustard, dredged in seasoned cornmeal, and dropped into a heavy pot of peanut oil at 350 degrees. The fillets went golden in about 6 minutes. Hush puppies, made from the leftover cornmeal batter with chopped onion and a pinch of sugar, hit the oil right after. 2 fillets on the plate, 4 hush puppies on the side, a wedge of lemon, a scoop of slaw, and a bottle of Crystal hot sauce on the table. Friday night fish fry in the 90s was a fundraiser, a backyard gathering, a church basement social, and a regular at-home supper all at once. Number 8, smothered turkey wings. The 99-cent pack of 3 turkey wings at the Food Lion was a complete dinner for 4 if you knew what to do with it. The wings were seasoned heavy with Lawry's, browned in a skillet and laid down in a roasting pan. A roux of flour and pan drippings, then onion, bell pepper, and a quart of water turned into a deep brown gravy that got poured right over the wings. The pan went into a 325-degree oven for 2 hours, covered with foil, the meat going so tender it pulled away from the bone with a fork. 2 wings on the plate, a scoop of mashed potatoes underneath, gravy over both. Smothered turkey wings were the budget Sunday dinner in 1,000 black households when the chicken money was thin. Number 7, peach cobbler in a Pyrex dish. 2 cans of sliced Del Monte peaches in heavy syrup, drained but not all the way, dumped into a buttered 9x13 Pyrex. A cup of self-rising flour, a cup of sugar, a cup of milk, and a stick of melted butter whisked together and poured over the peaches. A heavy shake of cinnamon and nutmeg on top into a 350-degree oven for 45 minutes until the crust came up golden and crackled when the serving spoon went in. The corner piece had more crust and less peach, and that was the piece everyone fought for. Cobbler was the dessert that grandmothers in the 90s could make from what was already in the pantry. Number 6, baked mac and cheese casserole. This was not the boxed kind. This was the Pyrex kind, the one that came out of the oven with a brown crust on top and a custard set center underneath. A pound of elbow macaroni, boiled and drained. A pound of sharp Kraft yellow cheese, hand grated. A cup of evaporated milk, 3 eggs, a stick of butter melted in, a heavy shake of black pepper, layered in the Pyrex with shredded cheese in between, topped with another half pound of cheese, and baked at 350 until the top went a deep gold. Black mac and cheese in the 90s was the Sunday side, the Thanksgiving side, the Easter side, the funeral repast side. The square cut from the corner of the pan was the prize, and the cook always claimed it before the serving started. Number 5, hot water cornbread patties. A bowl of fine yellow cornmeal, a heavy shake of salt, and a kettle of boiling water poured in slowly while a wooden spoon stirred the whole thing into a stiff paste. The paste got patted into flat cakes the size of a hand and dropped into a skillet of bacon grease over medium heat. 4 minutes one side, 3 the other, until the edges crisped and the inside stayed soft. Hot water cornbread went on the plate next to the greens, the beans, the catfish, anything with Potlikker. The patty got torn in half and used as a scoop, then the rest of it sopped up whatever was left on the plate. In the 90s, this was the cornbread of the work week. The pan of sweet cornbread was for Sunday. The hand patties were for every other night. Number 4, Lance toast cheese, peanut butter crackers. This was the snack that lived in every glove compartment on the block. Orange square crackers, salty on the outside, peanut butter pressed in the middle, sealed in a yellow cellophane sleeve that crinkled loud in a quiet car. 2 for $1 at the corner store. A pack got tucked into the glove box for the drive home from work, for the long ride to grandmother's house in South Carolina, for the school pickup line when the bus was running late. 6 crackers to a sleeve, the peanut butter just a little dry, the outside salty enough that the first bite always made a kid reach for the soda. In the 90s, the Lance pack was the universal hold me over snack, the one that turned up in every car, every purse, every desk drawer. Number 3, chitlins on Christmas Eve. The red 5-pound bucket of Aunt Bessie's came out of the back of the deep freezer the week before Christmas, and the kitchen got opened up to the cold air through the back door because everyone in the house knew what was coming. Hog intestines cleaned by hand, turned inside out, rinsed and rinsed in cold water with vinegar and a little lemon. Then a long simmer in a heavy pot with onion, bell pepper, garlic, red pepper flakes, and a bay leaf. 4 hours, lit on, the smell carrying out the second floor window and through the whole building. Some neighbors smelled it and knew exactly what house was cooking. Some neighbors walked a long way around. The chitlins came to the table on Christmas Eve with hot sauce, white vinegar, a wedge of raw onion, and a square of cornbread on the side. In the 90s, the chitlin tradition still held in plenty of black households, even though the younger cousins were already starting to pass the plate and ask for the mac and cheese instead. Number 2, Sunday morning fried chicken. A whole cut-up fryer, soaked in buttermilk overnight in the bottom of the fridge, then dredged in seasoned flour and dropped into a heavy pot of Crisco at 325 degrees. The chicken came out 15 minutes aside, the skin a deep mahogany, the inside steaming when the leg was pulled away from the thigh. It went onto a brown paper grocery bag spread on the counter to drain. Sunday fried chicken in the 90s was made before church, packed in foil, and eaten cold after service while the rice and gravy was still warming on the stove. Cold fried chicken at the kitchen counter at 1 p.m. was the unofficial first plate of the Sunday meal. Number 1, sweet potato pie. This is the pie that closed every holiday plate in every black household in America in the 1990s. 3 big sweet potatoes boiled in their skins, peeled and mashed with a stick of butter, a cup of brown sugar, a can of carnation evaporated milk, 2 eggs, cinnamon, nutmeg, and a splash of vanilla. The filling went into a deep dish Pillsbury crust and baked at 350 for an hour until the top set with a soft crack down the middle. The pie cooled on the windowsill, then went on the counter next to the foil-wrapped turkey, the pan of dressing, and the casserole of mac and cheese. A slice of sweet potato pie was the last plate of Thanksgiving, the last plate of Christmas, the last plate of Easter, and the slice grandmother cut for you was always a little bigger than the slice she cut for anyone else.
Okra and tomatoes stew was the kind of dish that stretched a garden into a meal. The pot came alive with color, bright reds and deep greens bubbling together, thickened just enough to cling to rice or cornbread. Okra was the backbone, its silky texture giving body to every spoonful, while tomatoes brought the tang that tied everything together. Grandparents made it in the summer when gardens overflowed and nothing went to waste. If you had a little onion, a pinch of salt, and patience, you could feed everyone. The smell drifted through the house, a mix of earthiness and spice that promised something hearty on the table. It wasn't just about taste, it was about gratitude, about pulling something beautiful out of the soil and turning it into sustenance. In lean times, this stew could hold a family steady. Some added smoked sausage when they had it, others kept it purely from the garden. But the feeling it gave was always the same: full, content, cared for. It's a dish that proves comfort doesn't need money, just memory. Wild grape must connected plantation kitchens to the native abundance of the American South. Muscadine and Scuppernong grapes grew untended along fences and forest edges, providing a dependable late summer harvest. Enslaved workers gathered the clusters and crushed them by hand to create a tangy juice that could be fermented slightly for a refreshing drink or boiled into a syrupy must used to season grains and greens. This technique echoed West African traditions of using fruit reductions to brighten savory dishes. After emancipation, muscadine wine and homemade grape jellies became hallmarks of Southern foodways, and small farms still produce them today. The careful gathering and slow simmering required patience and skill, qualities that defined the cooking of those who made the most of every wild resource. Wild grape must stand as both a practical recipe and a testament to how African American cooks merged Old World techniques with New World ingredients, leaving a flavor that continues to shape regional preserves and beverages across the Carolinas and Georgia. Chicken neck gravy was the very definition of stretching scraps into a full meal. Poultry was expensive and few families could afford large cuts, so nothing from a chicken ever went to waste. Necks were simmered slowly to release every bit of flavor, then thickened into a gravy with flour and drippings. Poured over rice, mashed potatoes, or biscuits, it transformed the cheapest part of the bird into something filling and comforting. Families looked forward to it because it stretched one bird into several meals, ensuring nothing was thrown away. This kind of resourcefulness defined survival cooking, and for many Black families in the South, it was routine. Chicken neck gravy might not have been glamorous, but it represented pride in making the most out of very little. It also carried the feeling of home, the scent of gravy simmering on the stove, and the relief of knowing everyone at the table would leave fed. Molasses, stacked cake graced weddings and homecomings with a sweetness born of patience and skill. Thin layers of spiced cake were baked individually, then stacked high with a rich molasses filling that soaked into the crumb as the dessert rested overnight. The dark syrup lent a deep flavor that spoke of both Caribbean cane fields and Southern kitchens. Families often baked the layers days ahead, turning the assembly into a festive gathering where aunts and cousins worked side by side. Each slice told a story of celebration and endurance, for molasses was affordable and plentiful even when other sweeteners were scarce. The cake's tall, impressive stature made it a centerpiece on tables decorated for special occasions, a symbol of abundance even in lean times. Today, few households take the time to roll, bake, and stack so many delicate layers, and the recipe lives mostly in old family cookbooks. Those who have tasted it know the quiet triumph of a dessert that rewards effort with lasting memory. In the 1960s, fatback and cabbage was a reminder that flavor did not come from abundance, but from knowing how to cook with care. It was a dish that taught respect for every part of the animal and every leaf from the garden. Pork, fatback, and cabbage turned scraps into sustenance. Vegetable pot pie with biscuit crust was one of the cleverest ways to turn leftovers into a comforting meal. My grandmother gathered whatever vegetables were left from the week, beans, carrots, peas, or turnips, and simmered them in a simple gravy. She poured the mixture into a dish and covered it with biscuit dough instead of pie crust, which baked into a golden, fluffy topping. The result was hearty, filling, and deeply satisfying, stretching scraps into something that felt like a Sunday supper. Each slice carried both thrift and comfort, a reminder that nothing from the kitchen was wasted. The biscuit crust gave the dish substance, making it a true dinner instead of just a side. In the 1960s, vegetable pot pie with biscuit crust was common across homes that relied on ingenuity, turning odds and ends into meals that filled plates and warmed hearts. It was survival, wrapped in comfort, food that told the story of resourceful families making the most of what they had. Rabbit and dumplings was the meal that turned a quiet woodland hunt into a hearty family supper when store-bought meat was rare. Hunters brought back rabbits dressed and cleaned, and cooks simmered the lean meat slowly with onions, carrots, and herbs until it fell from the bone. Soft flour dumplings were dropped into the rich broth, swelling as they absorbed the savory flavor and thickened the stew. The dish fed large households through cold nights, stretching a single rabbit to satisfy many plates. Children learned to roll the dumpling dough while elders told stories of patient mornings in the woods and the respect owed to the animal that provided the meal. The aroma of simmering broth filled cabins and farm kitchens, promising comfort after long days of work. With modern markets providing endless options, few families still prepare rabbit in this old style. Yet those who recall the tender meat and pillowy dumplings speak of a warmth and gratitude that no packaged dinner can ever replace. Wild rice pudding combined indigenous grains with African-inspired preparation to create a dish both nourishing and subtly sweet. Wild rice grew naturally in shallow lakes and slow rivers, and enslaved families near these wetlands harvested the dark grains with paddles and baskets, drying them in the sun for year-round use. Cooked slowly in water until tender, the rice was stirred with a bit of sorghum syrup or honey if available, making a warm pudding that supplied protein and lasting energy. Its nutty flavor and satisfying texture turned a simple bowl into a special treat, especially when fresh fruit or spices could be added. This recipe carried forward after emancipation as African American cooks continued to value wild rice for festive meals and family gatherings. Modern chefs still celebrate its earthy richness, but the story behind wild rice pudding honors the blend of native and African foodways that sustained people through scarcity and created a dessert that is at once humble and deeply rooted in the shared history of America's wetlands and kitchens. Hoppin' John was the heartbeat of New Year's morning and every day that needed a little hope. Black-eyed peas simmered with rice, and a hint of smoked meat turned into more than just a meal. It became a blessing. Grandparents swore by it, saying a bowl on the first day of the year would bring luck, health, and enough to last. The peas symbolized coins, the rice meant abundance, and every spoonful felt like a promise whispered between generations. You could smell the onions frying before the pot even started, the kind of smell that felt like homecoming. This dish came out of history, from the low-country kitchens of the South, and found its way into hearts across America. Even when times were thin, Hoppin' John stayed thick, filling bellies and spirits alike. It wasn't a rich person's dish. It was the people's dish, one that carried laughter, prayer, and endurance in equal measure. Today, even if you only make it once a year, you can feel that same wish for good fortune echo through every bite. Red drink, Juneteenth punch flowed like a symbol of freedom and memory at community celebrations marking emancipation. Made from hibiscus petals or bright strawberries steeped into a deep crimson infusion, The drink stood for resilience and the blood of those who fought for liberation. Families would gather in churchyards and town squares, pouring the sweet, tangy liquid into simple cups while music and laughter filled the warm June air. Children chased each other between picnic tables as elders told the story of the first Juneteenth, reminding everyone of the hard-won joy behind the holiday. The punch often carried a gentle spice from cloves or ginger, offering a flavor both refreshing and layered, much like the history it honored. Preparing the drink was as important as drinking it, with women and men alike contributing fruit, sugar, and labor to the cause. Though some communities still keep the tradition alive, many younger generations have never tasted the vibrant red drink that once defined a day of remembrance and celebration.
That whole list is really one long answer to the same quiet question. What did we eat back then? And why does so much of it feel out of reach now? The Sunday pot, the Friday fish fry, the Christmas Eve chitlin bucket, the slice of pie cut a little thicker for the grandchild who showed up. These recipes were never about the food alone. They were about the people who sat down together and the time it took to cook them. Our kitchens still know how to make every dish on this list. The question is whether we still know how to make the time for them.